Welcome back to the VB Toolbox, everyone, and to part 3 in my series, my reboot series on working with Microsoft SQL Server in Visual Basic.NET. In this tutorial, I will be showing you how to update records in your Microsoft SQL Server database, and we will do this by continuing to build our very basic user management system. If you haven't followed the rest of the series, I highly recommend at least watching the very first video where we cover creating the SQL control class. It's pretty much a requirement for this series. I mean, you can certainly work without it. You don't have to create it, but you have to know what it contains. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to head to my main form here. In the previous video, I showed you how to insert new records into your SQL Server database and retrieve the last identity key that was inserted in your table. In this one, we're going to be editing a record. And to do this, we're going to want to create a new form. So I'm going to head over to my Solution Explorer, right-click on my project, and select Add a New Windows Form. Make sure I have Windows Form selected and give that a name. I'm going to call mine Edit User. I'm going to stretch that out just slightly, and I'm going to add a few controls to this and try to make this as friendly as possible. First thing I'm going to add is a text box. And I am going to use this text box for searching and filtering, similar to what we did in our first video with one enhancement. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to change the name property to txt filter. And I like to set the border style, not a requirement by any stretch, but I like to set it to fixed single so it's a little more elegant. And next thing I want to add is a list box. So let's find your list box control in the toolbox and go ahead and put that in there. Make sure that you give it enough width for, so that it can handle any of the usernames in your database. I'm going to call this list box. I'm going to rename it to LB for list box and users. Okay. So the objective here is to be able to select a user from here, be able to filter the users list if I want to, and then show that record, an individual record over here on the right that we can, basically put into a form and edit the user properties. So next thing I'm going to go ahead and just add a group box for fun and organization. Just going to put that over here. And I'm going to call this, I'm not going to rename it, I'm just going to call it member details. All right. And there are a few fields that I'm going to need in here. I'll bring that down just a hair. I get worried about cosmetics. I don't know why. Let's see here. So grab a text box, drop it in right up here, and this is going to be a read-only box to contain the user's ID. Okay. And what this is actually going to represent is the primary key that we have in our table. All right. So if I come over here, all right, my primary key is what I want up here, and the reason I'm making it read-only is you generally will not ever allow your users to update the primary key value. That's a sort of a reference value for your database, so I don't recommend allowing them to change that. Also, any other keys that you may have indexes for that require uniqueness, For example, I would never allow two users to use the same username. That would cause problems in most applications. So I might have an index that required uniqueness on this column. So these two columns are going to be read-only in here. So I'm going to grab a label. I'm going to change the text caption on that to ID. And jump back over to my ID field here. And I'm just going to name this txt ID. And that will store that ID value from our database. And I'm going to change it to fixed single, and I'm also going to mark it as read only, so the user cannot change the value there. All right. And if you want, you could do something like, text alignment, set it to the center or something. That's up to you. And next up, I am going to do my username. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste that field down here. Because I also want that one to be read-only. I'm going to rename this one to txt user. That's will be for my username. I'm going to take this ID label and I'm going to copy and paste it, Control-C, Control-V, and bring it down here. And I'm going to change the text on that to be username. All right, I'm going to bump that down with my arrow keys. And now that we have that, my password field is going to be very similar. So I'm just going to select both of those objects, Control-C, Control-V to paste, and change the label on the text here. This is going to be password. Now the password I do want to be able to change, so I'm going to remove the read-only requirement here. Oh, I forgot I had these on center. Just going to change both of those real quick to the left. All right. So I want to turn off read-only on this one. Where are you? And I want to set use system password character to true on the password box. And I'm going to change the name of that box to txt-pass. All right. So that should be txt user, txt pass, txt ID. And if you remember from the previous video, there were a couple of other fields that we used. We supplied values to or from a checkbox. So I'm going to find a checkbox here. And I want to be able to know if the user is an admin or if their account is active. So I'm going to say CB active is the name of the first checkbox, and I'm also going to change the caption on that, the text value to active. Then I'm going to copy that and paste it into the group box. And I'm going to change the text on this one to admin. And I'm going to name it CB for checkbox, admin. All right. It's a nice simple form. We probably want a way to save our values here, so I'm just going to create a button here to save with. CMD save. You can call it CMD save, CMD submit, or really anything you like. I'm just saying save. I'm changing the text on it to save as well. Additionally, I mean, if you really wanted to, you could add the little toolbar icons up here, you know, floppy disk for saving and all this, just like up here. That's up to you. I'm going to let you do that on your own for now. Let's see. So now that we have all these fields ready to go, we should be able to just jump in and start coding on this. Now I need a load event, so I'm going to just double click in the main form area here. Probably not in your group box. If you click out in the main area here, you're going to get your load form event. So what I need to do, same as previous tutorials, is make sure that this form has an MDI parent. So I'm going to say MDI parent, so it shows up within our main form. And my main form is form 1. Alright. And any other startup events we want to launch, we can do there as well. So for now, I'm going to stick with creating an instance of our SQL control class for this form to use. So I'm going to say private SQL as new SQL control. All right. And because I'm not specifying a parameter for that, you know, just to recap, it's going to use this default connection string. We did provide an override in our first tutorial if you wanted to specify a different database or connection string for this particular form, but that's up to you. So next up, we need a way to fetch users, and what we want to do is populate this list box here. So let's go ahead and create a method to do that. I'm going to say private sub fetch users, and I'm not going to give it any parameters, keep it basic here, and say refresh user list. All right, now anytime we refresh these, first thing we want to do is clear out existing entries. Otherwise, every time it refreshes, it's going to duplicate the values in it. So what we'll do is we'll dump anything that exists in there. I'm going to say lbusers.items. I want to clear our list box items, so I'm going to use the clear method. And next thing to do is provide a parameter for our user search and or for the filter text box and run the query. So I'm going to say add params and run query. Nice and easy. So we'll say SQL.addParam, and as I like to do often is provide a wildcard search feature. So the user can, you know, search for any number of expressions within a specific field. So I will do at users for the name of the parameter, and provide a wildcard, which is a %, and then I will concatenate on the txt filter .text. All right, so that looks in our filter text box, and anything it finds it's going to search for. So I have to concatenate on another wildcard, so anything before or after our search criteria is ignored. Let's see. Once we have a parameter, we are ready to execute our query. So say sql.execute query. And I'm going to run select username. Remember, I just want a single field, something that's identifiable. I could do the ID or something, but you know, that's just a number reference column, so it's not going to be really useful. I need something that's user readable and friendly. So I'm going to go ahead and, you know, I like to break these into multiple lines so it's more readable. That's up to you. You could do it all on a single line here. Just make sure you put a space at the end of each one so you don't get any run-ons when you concatenate them. I'm going to do a line drop here. And so I want to select username from my members table. Put a space on the end. And finally, I want where username is like, that is when you're using wildcards, you need to use like. And then we'll say where it's like our parameter, users. All right, and then we'll terminate that query with a semicolon. Now, before in the last tutorial, we added this return identity value. We're not inserting a record, so we're just going to leave that. By default, it's false, so you don't need to provide a parameter there. Or next step, once we've executed our query, assuming everything went well, if it didn't, you can throw in some error checking. You can say if SQL that has exception. You can report on it if you want. Then if it does have an error, then you can say exit sub. That's up to you. It's not really necessary, but report and abort on errors. And finally, we need to loop through our data set, our data table that was returned from our query, and stuff those entries that it finds, the username specifically, since that's the only column we're pulling, into our list box. So what I'm going to say, I'm going to do a for each loop. I'm going to say loop rows and return users to our list. Okay. And say for each r as a data row in sql.datatable.rows. For each row that it finds, grab the username column and stick it in lb users. So lbusers.items.add r parentheses and our column name, okay, which is username. And if everything goes well, we should get a box full of usernames. Let's go ahead and test this. Going to fetch users. Run that. Oh, I haven't provided any logic to show the screen yet, and forgot that. So I'm going to come back to my main form, and I'm going to double click on edit user, make sure the name is something. All right, so I'm going to rename that entry mi for menu item edit user. Okay, so that's a little more friendly now. Oh, all right, what did I just do? Ah, man, I was on the main. Sorry. Menu strip item manage users. Sorry, I got to correct that now. I need to come down here and make sure this is selected. I apologize. And it looks like I already named that. So, wow. Way to go, genius. All right. Double click on that guy. It's going to generate a click event for us. And in here, I am going to reference my new form, edit user. So I'm going to just say edit user dot show. All right. Now that user form should show up inside of our main form because it's the parent form. So MDI, that's what I was looking for. And it launched that query against the database, the fetch users method, and dumped all of the users that it found into my list box. Now we have a couple of options for sorting here. We can sort it through the list box itself. We can sort the data rows, or we can just add sorting to our query, which is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to jump back into my edit users, and you come here. I'm going to go ahead and take out that semicolon, put a space instead. So I'm going to continue on this query. I'm going to do concatenate on another line. I'm going to say, let's see, where username like users, and then I'm going to say order by username, and I want an ascending order on that, A to Z. So I'm just going to do that. And then I'm going to end it again with a semicolon. I'm going to run that and see if alphabetical. All right. AGH, let's see, looks good. All right, so now when we select these items, we want to be able to put those member values into our little update form here. But also, I want to be able to filter. So I'm going to just, because this is a little easier here, I'm just going to do the filter part first. I'm going to stop that and jump back. Oops, I don't need to go back in there. And what I want is a reference to our TXT filter here. So select it from the drop down there of your objects. I want the filter text box, and I want to generate a key down event. Okay, so I'm going to find key down, click on that, and it's going to generate the key down event for our filter text box. And here we are going to apply our filter to our user search. So I'm just going to say if e.keycode equals keys.enter. All right, so if the user presses the enter button, then fetch users. That's pretty much it. Now, if we do that, it's going to probably ding at us when we press that enter button. I don't know if you can hear that. Not recording from my sound card. So anyway, I push the enter key and it dings, and there's a way to suppress that. I could probably do a short tutorial on that, but I'm just going to do it here. So I'm going to say e.handled equals true, and then e.suppress key press equals true. And that should suppress that ding sound. It doesn't hurt anything to have it, it's just annoying more than anything. So edit user. And I'm going to try a wildcard search here. I'm going to press enter. So anything that has A in it, it finds. What about just the letter A? Okay. So our Daramus, Lucinda, sample, these all have the letter A in it. So our wildcard search is working great. All right, so I'm hitting enter. If you clear out all the text, it does a full wildcard search and grabs all records. So that's pretty awesome. That's a really nice feature for any database application. Simple wildcard search. And now we need to be able to select these guys and put the values in these form fields. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to add another method. And this one I'm going to call, let's see, private sub get user details. All right. And I want details on a specific user, so I'm going to say, I'm going to add a parameter for the username. And that will be passed into a parameter for our query. So as string. All right. So now we can add our params in query, SQL.addParam. And the parameter I want to add, similar to before, I'm going to do @user. And I'm going to search for the user name that was provided in the method parameter. So, and then I'm ready to execute my query. So I'm going to say SQL.executeQuery. And the query I want to execute is select star from members space concatenate on a new line. Whoops, I did that in the wrong spot. Nice. So I'm going to come here, drop that down. All right, that looks a little better. Where username hello, equals @user. Boom. All right. So very simple and basic query here. Now, as it stands, we're looking at this and we're going to say, give me the username that specifically equals the username that was passed through here. If for some strange reason, and this should not happen, if you possibly have records that are the same, or yeah, it shouldn't do it if it just had, like, if I had sample user and sample user 2, shouldn't, I don't think sample user would return both of those. I'm just curious here. It shouldn't do it. But just to be on the safe side, because you know when we're putting these values into form fields, we literally only want a single record to be returned ever. So when we select it, that one gets put in here. So to limit that, we can just say top 1 star. All right, that grabs a single record, the first one that it finds, it grabs it. Just a little fail safe, I guess. So it really shouldn't hurt anything, but in either case, even if it did pull multiple records, it's going to grab the first one it finds. So record, if record count is less than 1, then abort. So we're going to say exit sub. All right. If we searched for the user and the user was not found for some reason, and it should always be found because we found it when we populated the list box, but if there is some strange error and the user details are not able to come up, then we want to abort rather than crash. All right. So next step, now that we have secured our record, we have our data table has a single record for the selected user. We are going to stuff the values of that into our form field. So I'm going to say for each, even though there's only one, R as a data row in our SQL.dt.rows. All right, so it's going to loop that one record. The R just makes it a little bit easier for us to grab onto that. We're going to say txtid.text equals R, and the ID column is what I want from my members table. Then I'm going to say txtuser.text equals R. What field could that be? Oh yeah, username. And txtpass.text equals R, password. And let's see, the others are active. We've got ID, we've got username. We're not using the join date right now. Got active and admin. Okay. So checkbox active dot checked value, we're going to set that to whatever value it finds in the active column. A 0 or a 1 will be translated to a Boolean value, just so you know, in case you're wondering why that's not a true or false in that column. So active, and then cbadmin dot checked equals R in the admin column. All right, that's not too painful. So now we have a way to grab our user details. We need to use the selected index change on, it's an event for list box, so I'm going to just double click on the list box and it will generate the selected index change event. Okay, and from there all we are going to do is say get user details, and the username that we want to get details for will be our lb users.text. So that should output whatever item is selected in that list box. So let's go ahead and try that out and see if it crashes. Grab Arderamus. Look at that. ID 8. I can't change it. Can't change the username, but I can change the password and I can change the active and admin values. Let's check Lucinda and see what she's got. Okay, she is not an admin. She has an active value. One thing we don't have is an ability to make changes and save it yet. Okay, but we can now grab our values. And this ID becomes, because this is our primary key, that's going to be the value that we use to update this individual user. Though you could use any other unique field as well, like username in this example. So that's up to you. The primary key is usually the most foolproof way to manage records, so I recommend using that. Let's see here. We are going to create one more method here. I'm going to say private sub update user, and this is what you came to this tutorial for. You want to know how to update your database. Well, we have 4 different fields that we want to work with. We've got specifically this field, this field, this field, and the ID. So password, active, admin, and ID. The username will not change and it won't be referenced in this command. So we want to update these 3 fields where the ID is equal to the ID that was captured. So let's go ahead and form that query. I'm going to say sql.addParam, and the first parameter I will update will be the password. So I'm going to make a parameter called @pass, and the value that I want to update is whatever I change txtpass.text to be. Okay, next parameter will be the checkbox for active, so I'm going to say sql.addParam @active and cbActive.checked. I want the checked value, and that will be translated to a 0 or 1 from the Boolean value. So sql.addParam @admin, and you guessed it, we want cbAdmin.checked. And my filter is going to be the user's ID number, so I'm going to say sql.addParam @ID for the name, and I want to use whatever's in txtid.text. All right, so we've added our parameters, and now we are ready to execute our update command, which is sql execute query. Even though technically it's a non-query if you want to be technical. The command is update members, put a space at the end, drop down a line if you want to keep it readable. And we want to set the password column to be equal to our password parameter. And we'll separate each of these with a comma. Next field I want, next column to update is going to be the active column, and that is going to be equal to @active parameter. And finally, the admin column will be equal to @admin. And we will put a space and drop down one more line. And this final line will be our filter. We only want to update a single user, not every user in the table. So I'm going to say where the user ID is equal to the user that we selected, which is @ID. Okay, and let's end that query with a semicolon. Awesome. And if there are errors, I do want to report an abort. So if sql.hasException, meaning we entered something that the database did not like or messed up on our query, please report it. And then exit the sub. And if you want, this is completely optional, but we could say throw a message box and say user has been updated. And if you wanted at this point, you could close the window or disable your save button. Just like that. That's up to you. Totally optional at the end there. Whoops, we forgot to actually apply this update user to our command button. So I'm going to come over to my form, double click save, and say update user. Now let's try making a change to our database. I'm going to bring up my database here. Let's take Vanessa here and change her password and make her an admin. All right, so I'm going to come back here. Whoops, where's my, there's my app. I'm going to manage users. I'm going to edit users. And I just want Vanessa. Give me the V users. Okay, we got VB Toolbox and Vanessa. I'm going to select her. Her ID is 2. Username is Vanessa. I'm going to change this to new password. And I'm going to make her an administrator. And I'm going to save. Ooh, invalid column name, pass. Okay, so let's see where I messed up at. Come back here. Somewhere in my update statement, you can see I updated members, but I set pass. Oh, my password column is not pass, it's password. All right, so our error handling is working well. Just gonna fix that and see if it's happy now. I want Vanessa and I want new password, and I save. User has been updated. How do I know the user has been updated? Well, let's jump back into our database. I'm just going to run the query over here. Oh, look at that, new password, and she is now an admin. So we know that it worked. It updated our database. Wow, I guess that's pretty much everything for this tutorial. So we have a wildcard search, and this disabled as well. Now, of course, we probably want to re-enable it afterwards. So I don't know if disabling that is such a good idea, or you could just enable it if it's if a new user's been selected. That's really up to you. I could very easily just come up to nah, I'm not gonna worry about it right now. I think that pretty much demonstrates how to update your database. So that's a single user update. There are other ways to update your database. One way is to update it from a data grid view, which I may cover in there's an error in that form. Username field somewhere. I think that was a test from an earlier episode. But you can use these data grid views and update the tables directly from those. So that'd be another good tutorial. Anyway, I wish you all well. If you like this video, please give me the old thumbs up and let me know how you felt. If you didn't like it, let me know why. And if you want to give me a thumbs down, that's fine too. I do appreciate all the support from everybody, and I appreciate the community jumping in and helping other users with questions that they have. I wish you all well. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.